One of the most impressive stories from World War II is that of Tiger 231, the Tiger that received 252 cannon, anti-tank, and tank shots in a single battle, and surprisingly managed to survive to keep fighting. The Panzerkampfwagen 6 is probably the most famous tank in all of history, both for its intrinsic combat capabilities and for the fear it instilled in the unfortunate men who had to face them. In this video, we will talk about the most legendary Tiger of all the Tigers, the one remembered as the Tiger that refused to die. Get comfortable, I'm Kevin Aguilar, and this is Guns Club. In February of 1943, the Germans had suffered a massive defeat in Stalingrad. Therefore, they decided to concentrate their efforts further north on the Eastern Front, particularly in capturing Kursk. To take Kursk, Operation Citadel was created, whose objective was to take the Kursk Bulge, shortening the front and allowing them to continue with the strategic initiative. To take Kursk, the strategy would be to envelop the city from the north and south to encircle the Soviets who were defending further to the west. For this operation, Germany would have its best generals at their disposal and serving them the best armored forces available up to that point. Among all battalions, the 503 Heavy Tank Battalion was notable with its 45 Tiger tanks. The famous Tiger 231, one of the 45 Tiger tanks, was just another tank among the masses at that time, where the famous Tiger 231 would be, which was just another Tiger among many at that time. Our protagonist was commanded by Lieutenant Sabel, and very soon, on July 5th, 1943, one of the most epic battles in human history would begin, the Battle of Kursk. The 503rd Heavy Tank Battalion would go into combat with 43 of its 45 operational Tigers. The 503rd Tank Battalion would advance through a collective farm in Rostov-on-Don in present-day Russia. The area had been heavily fortified with anti-tank guns, machine gun positions, and anti-tank rifles, PTRD-41, and of course several dozen tanks. T-34-76 were making rounds in the area, something that took the Germans by surprise because they did not expect any kind of resistance in this area. The Tiger 231 received a first hit on the front of the armor, shattering the spare track that the Germans usually put on their tanks as makeshift armor. This would only be the first of the countless shots our protagonist would receive today. Various other shots of 45mm caliber would break the commander's periscope and a shell would graze past, breaking the hatch and causing it to fall inside the tank. This was a problem, as the smoke from the battle was entering the tank. The mantlet would also be hit by a 76mm projectile head-on. This is the area with the highest armor of all tanks in general, but by stopping the projectile in its tracks, several rivets from the cannon system gave in, causing it to get stuck in the recoil position and even starting to spill a lot of liquids. Just like these, various other large-caliber impacts from the T-34s damaged almost all the instruments, like radios and also the steering levers. Other impacts caused damage to the engine through vibration, causing fires in it, but all these fires were quickly controlled by the crew and by the fire suppression systems. During the battle, the sound of each projectile resonated in the tank, increasingly torturing the ears and morale of the tank crew. When hit by a projectile, the tank's armor behaves like a diaphragm, causing a deafening, extremely disturbing, and painful sound. As the crew of Tiger 231 had to endure this over and over again for hours. For the final moments of the battle, and after a couple of anti-tank cannon hits on the sides, the Tiger lost. 2 torsion bars and several wheels on the right side were damaged. The turret rotation mechanism also jammed during combat and was irreparable. The combat ended up lasting 6 hours. By that point, the Tiger 231 was unfit for combat, so the crew decided to return. 60 kilometers to try and repair the Tiger. Our protagonist managed to return to the rear, cutting through the 60 kilometers in a slow, paused but constant way, leaving a trail of oil and fuel such as if it were blood. The soldiers who saw the Tiger coming were surprised at its condition and couldn't believe there was a living crew inside. When the crew got out of the Tiger, they couldn't believe they were breathing, as they couldn't withstand 4 or 5 projectiles. There were so many that they lost count in just the first 30 minutes of combat. Upon observing the unit, the crew was as astonished as the soldiers who saw the Tiger arrive. Counting all the impacts, there were a total of 252 impacts. 207 hits from anti-tank rifles and 47 from anti-tank cannons and medium tanks. The shots were received from all possible and imaginable angles, and it's even more impressive considering that the Tigers didn't have sloped armor, which meant that most hits had to be stopped head-on. Lieutenant Sabel stated in his damage report, "The Tiger's armor met all expectations placed on it satisfactorily," a note that undoubtedly expresses the respect that Sabel had for the armored vehicle that saved his life. By the end of the conflict, we would know why. The Soviets had casually fortified areas where German troops and tanks would pass, and they always seemed to be one step ahead of the Germans in this battle. And it was because the British would manage to crack the Enigma code, so they would intercept all the German plans. Months before these even mobilized a single soldier, so the Soviets knew well where the Germans would come from and how. The Tiger 231 after this feat would be declared as irreparable. The engine was destroyed, the armor looked like cheese, and the damage to its main weapon and optic systems were such that repairing it was impossible. Therefore, Sabel and his crew were given a new Tiger to return to battle. The turret of the Tiger 231 would be recycled to be used as a test fort in a gunner's academy in Germany, while the rest was melted and recycled to become part of other Tigers. What this tank endured, without a doubt, is unprecedented in all of military history, being the Tiger 231, a true legend, and whose story continues to amaze many enthusiasts and history lovers. If you're interested in tanks, you're probably curious about why oscillating turrets existed, how they worked, and why they disappeared. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one. Goodbye.